Welcome to Rich Planet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. Today I'm in London and I've come to talk to an activist and award-winning filmmaker who has been exposing institutional child abuse in a no-nonsense, hard-hitting fashion for the last 5 years. He and his siblings were all victims of abuse. This problem has gained some mainstream coverage in recent months with regards to the Jimmy Savile scandal, and here to talk about this and the whole issue is Bill Maloney. Welcome, Bill.
Hello, Rich. Good to be here.
All right, then. Bill, I've just sat and watched your most recent film. I first met you in May 2012, where you came to see a talk that I was given in Walton-on-Thames.
Yeah.
And I've become aware of your films, so I was very interested to do an interview. Now, before we start talking about the films, and then finally we're going to talk about the crux of the matter itself and institutional child abuse, because obviously a very disturbing subject. But I think it's important for people to know your life story first. That's really where I want to start with this. So just tell us where you were born, Bill, how many brothers and sisters you had, and what happened throughout your early childhood.
Well, a short synopsis of my life. My parents were both Irish. They came over here in the early 50s, and they were both abused in the institutions in Ireland, whether they were sort of children's homes or whether they were young offenders, whatever. And my mum, you know, she obviously from that had a few mental issues, and she started having us kids. And my dad was working in the tunnels, you know, like when I say the tunnels, in this country, you know, the Victoria line, you know, the tubes. And he was a foreman or a gangerman, as they used to call them, you know. And he was in charge of those guys, but he used to start very early in the morning. So he'd be starting at like 5 o'clock in the morning. He used to go over to Highbury, and he took me there a couple of times. And when you know, my mum was left to her own devices, and she started drinking, and she was using Purple Hearts, which was the drug of the day, and the social services started taking their children away, so we all wound up in care from babies. Right.
So how old were you when you were first taken into care then, Bill?
When I was first taken into care, I was 4 years of age. And that was but I had been in sort of children's homes that I don't remember, you know.
Right, so how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I've got 7 siblings.
7.
And we were all taken into care. So if I can just give you, some of my siblings were in care a lot longer than me. But by the time I was 20, I'd served 14 years in different institutions in this country. And the first institution that I can remember was one called Mill Hill. And it was an orphanage, a Catholic orphanage run by nuns, and that was over in North London.
So out of the 8 brothers and sisters, how many are still alive today?
Well, my sister Diana's dead, my brother Peter's dead, my mum's dead, and it was only about a year ago I found out my mum took her own life in a mental institution. Now that was never disclosed to me. It was only because what they practiced with my family, the social services, was family alienation. So I've got one brother, my brother James, who went to a boarding school in Guildford and was abused there, very opulent area. He talks like Prince Charles, awfully. He says, "Oh, hello, Bill, how are you?
Right.
Haven't seen you for 35 years." So he speaks like that. And then my other siblings will, I've got 2 others that talk with middle-class accents, and then there's myself and my brother Anthony, Tony. We speak
Cockney.
Cockney. That's what they call me, the Cockney speaking Irishman in the film industry, you know. Right. So it was very tough. We was in and out of care. My mother left. My mother used to come back and abuse my dad. She used to beat him because he was only a small man, even though he was a champion boxer. He was featherweight champion of Southern Ireland, you know. But he would only sort of restrain her or protect himself, you know. So it was, when I was at home, it was very violent. And then when I was taken into care, it was even more violent.
Right, okay. So, and the 2 siblings that have died, that is linked to abuse of some kind. Just tell us.
Yeah, well, my brother Peter, firstly, he was 3 years younger than me. I'm 57 now. And so he was 4 years younger than me, sorry. And he was in and out of different institutions. And then the Pilkington people, you know, the Pilkington glass people.
Yeah.
One of the the biggest glass company in this country. And one of them, Lord Pilkington, he used to take on young kids, but he was interested in art. So he would take on young kids from the lower working class areas, and it was very, very poor then, you know. and he would take them under his wing and help them with their art, etc. But my brother Peter, even in those days, at the age of 17, was addicted to heroin.
Okay.
So he told me that some very rich, opulent people used to look after him. So that was my brother Peter, and he was found dead in a squat in Tunbridge Wells.
Right.
Opulent area again, and in those days with the transport would have taken a long time to get there, you know. So now with hindsight, I've started investigating the case. Is why was my brother found in a squat, a boy from Brixton and Peckham, really sort of poverty-stricken areas of the day. Why was he taken there?
Right.
And he ran up on heroin anyway, so they said he killed himself, and that came out as suicide. And then my sister Diana, this is the real mysterious one, is after I released the film Sun, Sea and Satan to the national networks, BBC, ITV, Channel 4, etc. After that was released, 2 weeks after that, she was found dead in her apartment, and it's very suspicious. And if you go on to Pie Mesh Films, you can see the full timeline of what happened to my sister. So my sister died under very suspicious circumstances, cause of death unascertained 3 years later.
Right. Okay.
And on the day of her inquest, I received an email from the Jersey police asking for a copy of the film Sun, Sea and Satan, and I refused them. So that was on the day of my sister's inquest. On the same day as the inquest, a piece came out in the Irish World about Sun, Sea and Satan,
right.
and you know what the film was about, and my involvement in it, and what had happened to my sister. So no investigation. And my sister, when she was found dead in her apartment, even though her body had decomposed, it was never made a crime scene. Now, if a body's found decomposed, then that must be always, by the law, it must be made a crime scene and investigated. Never was. Right. It never was.
So do you think there's some, your own gut feeling, do you think there's some connection of her death with that film then?
Yeah, I do, absolutely.
Was she involved in the film at all? Or
no, she wasn't involved in the film, but she did finance the film.
Right.
And she was going to come over to Jersey, and I had a phone call from her when I was in Jersey, and she was crying. She said, I can't do it, Bill, I can't come over there. Because she was taken to Jersey from Lambeth, a children's home in Lambeth, on bogus sailing trips. And strangely enough, the first disclosures of child abuse on the island of Jersey came from the Sea Cadets. Right. So she wouldn't come over there, you know. She said, I can't come over there, Billy, you know, I don't want to. And now recently we found a picture of Jimmy Savile, and there's a pyramid of children.
Yeah.
And he's sitting at the bottom. The young girl, blonde girl at the top of that pyramid, that is my sister Diana.
Right. Is that at Haute de la Garenne?
Haute de la Garenne,
right, okay.
Yeah, on the island of Jersey. So my sister was there.
Right. Okay. Now, just run through your films in order, Bill. What was the first film that you made?
The first film, first of all, I started in the short film industry, and I made short films, you know, and all my short films were sort of like between 15 minutes and half an hour, and they were always they had social implications behind them, so it was social politics that I was interested in. Then,
but not specifically child abuse, though.
No, I hadn't come forward about my child abuse or my siblings to anyone, even to my wife. You know, I've been married to the same woman for 37 years, and it was only when I started 5 years ago, I left the film industry because I was asked to be involved in the Football Factory and other Brit flicks, and a script I'd written myself, which was a social drama by a film company called Vertigo Films. And but I left them because the film industry is very dirty, and it's dirty in more ways than one. And as it's coming out now, you know, we've got a lot of entertainers, because I see the BBC, I see TV as the film industry. I don't just, you know, of the day 35. It's got to be 35mm or 75.
So before you got in making the child abuse exposure films,
I was a filmmaker, dramatic filmmaker.
So and how long were you involved in that for?
Probably about 4 years I was involved in making dramatic films.
Okay, but what about before that then?
Before that I was a hod carrier for 20 years, so I carried bricks on my shoulder for 20 years. I carried
on a building site.
On a building site, I worked hard. You know, I carried bricks on my shoulder, and now I'm carrying the kids on my shoulder. You know, if you like. But after that, I started up my own decorating company, and I was doing well, you know. But it was only when I reached about 40, I started to think about what had happened to me. Because you know, I started thinking, like, I want to get in touch with my brothers and sisters, and I don't know where they live. I don't, because they had split us all up. I didn't know where anyone lived.
So just spell that out, Bill. You're saying you were sexually abused as a child? Then?
I don't know.
Talk about that or not?
Well, yeah, I'll talk about it. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't know. Now, when I was I was in an experimental boarding school, and it was called Beechcroft in Tooting Bec. And when I went there, I was 12. And I used to have a reoccurring dream. It was like I was asleep, but my arse, my anus, I was in pain.
Right.
And sometimes in the morning, that pain, I could still feel that pain. But it was like there was dreams and I couldn't wake up. Now, the majority of my abuse, I took a lot of beatings, especially in the children's homes, up until I was about 12, until I went to Beechcroft. By sort of female carers, nuns, whatever. The females were very, very spiteful. And then once I started hitting Beechcroft and institutions like Beechcroft and then young offenders institutions, then a lot of my abuse was again beatings in the institutions, and also I was often put into some kind of solitary confinement, and I was put into solitary confinement as a child as well. You know, so whether that was in a cupboard under the stairs in a children's home, or whether it was in a young offenders institution in a cell. So that was my abuse. But you know, drugs were used, and there's a book. It's called Pin Down, and it's written by you all might like to see it. It's written by a lady called Cooper, and. In that she's talking about drugs being used on children in children's homes, and that's what triggered it for me. So you know,
so you put two and two together, and you thought that maybe you were drugged and then abused when you were unaware of it. Yeah,
because some mornings I'd wake up and I was just so drowsy, and there was problems like that with a lot of kids. But in that the experimental boarding school in Tooting Bec, there was a prolific paedophile. He was to become a prolific paedophile, and even in the newspapers they were calling him public enemy number one. Right. His name was Leslie Bailey. He was a black guy, and Leslie Bailey, he wound up the main thing that he was arrested for, though there were many terrible things that he'd done to children. There was him and 3 other guys in a caravan, and they raped and attacked, raped and killed, I believe it was a 9-year-old kid, tortured him. So this boarding school that I went to, it was experimental, but we were told we were maladjusted, which were kids from dysfunctional homes, but we had to, were supposedly, we all had high intelligence of some sort.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right then, Bill. Well, we're going to go for the first break, but after the break we're going to discuss some of Bill's films in more detail. Welcome back. I'm talking to Bill Maloney about institutional child abuse. Now then, Bill, let's run through your films. What was the first film that you made that was covering this particular issue?
Well, the first film I made, I went to. I made a film. Actually, it was a drama, and it was called Lunatic. And Lunatic was about a guy whose life was, you know, revolved around the full moon, the moon cycle, because the moon is a very powerful, you know, entity, if you like. And when you think about it, the moon is it's responsible for our highest tides. When there's a full moon, that's when you get your highest tides. Yep. Okay, so our bodies are sort of 84% water. So I always believed that it affected us, you know, and you find that a woman's premenstrual cycle is exactly the same as the full moon, every 28 days, you know. So I made this film, and this guy, it was like a gangster film, but it was a gangster without a gun. And there was a lot of social issues involved in it. So this film was chosen to be entered for the New York Independent Film and Video Festival, right? And that was in Greenwich Village. So I went out to represent that film. And
how long was the film?
The film, it was 90 minutes, but it was a drama.
So full length.
Oh yeah, it was a full length feature. That was the first feature I made after, you know, most film directors, they start off in the short film industry and then they build up. So that was my first piece of work. And
so what sort of budget did that have then, Bill? Was it like a low budget film?
Yeah, that was very like micro budget, you know,
Right,
because
okay.
I walked away from Vertigo Films and told them really to shove it all, you know, and because I wanted to do my own work because I didn't trust their editing and it was too controlling, too manipulative. Because
Right.
with a film director, what people have to understand is if you're a film director, everybody who works on that project, and there can be hundreds if you look at some of the big epics, but of all those people that are involved in the film, their duty is to make sure that the director gets his vision up on that screen. That doesn't happen. That does not happen very rarely unless you're Spielberg, right? So you're controlled by production, by people that are putting the budget in, the investors.
Producers.
The producers and whatever, you know.
Yeah. So did that have any child abuse theme in it then, Bill?
No, it didn't. Like I say, I really hadn't come forward, you know, as an abuse victim, and the people in the film industry, they weren't aware of what was over my shoulder with my siblings, etc. But when I left them, and so I made this, I went and got £30,000 because the film budget I walked away from was £1.2 million.
Right.
Okay, you know, my mates say to me, they say that took a lot of doing, Bill, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because I would have been of a millionaire status now, but it was a dirty business, and what's coming out now, it is, because like, the entertainment world is being shredded at the moment, you know. Okay. But when I went out to New York, I took a small camera with me, you know, and a small digital camera, and I started going onto the streets. So I went into Harlem, and everybody said to me, don't go into Harlem, Bill, you know what I mean? I said, shut up, I come from Brixton, Peckham and Lewisham, you know what I mean? We've got guns on the street there as well. And it's so I went there and I started shooting some documentary. I was at the poor people, you know, the Hispanics and that, and whoever was poor. And I saw some horrific things out there. And then when I came back to London, I'd done the same comparison on the streets of London. When we was in New York, the majority of people on the street, almost all of them, apart from two, I think, they were black people. In London, it was white people, and we only found one black person in London living on the street. So
only one?
Only one. That's all we saw was one person, one black person on the street. You know, but whatever that is, you know.
So,
who knows?
but that still wasn't covering child abuse?
No, I still wasn't covering child abuse. But then when I came back to London and I started talking to the people, they started talking about child abuse. They started talking about child abuse to me. That a lot of these people that are living on the street were abuse victims, whether they're alcoholics, whether they're drug addicts, whatever, they were abuse victims. And then it went bing. And when I looked at the film Billy and Lily, because I had to spoof that because we're saying outrageous things in it, you know, I'm really having a go at the Queen, the monarch, establishment.
Right, so just step back, Bill. The first film was called what? Give me the name of that. The 90-minute one that you filmed in New York.
That was called Lunatic.
Lunatic.
Yeah, but I'd also made another piece of drama after that before.
And that was that called?
And that was called The Blunderers. That was about a 50-year-old black recovering crack cocaine addict and a 50-year-old white recovering alcoholic. Right. So I directed the film, wrote the film, and I also played the recovering alcoholic, which is what I was at the time. I was a recovering alcoholic. I hadn't had a drink for 17 years. But when we won the award in America, and I shot the documentary footage, and some black people, when I went down to Harlem, I showed them it on the camera, and they started crying about. They were just looking at it off the LCD screen, off the camera, the raw footage, the rushes as we call them, and they started crying. And they started saying to me, be careful, and you know, but it was making that and then coming back, doing a comparison in London for the people living on the street. And by the way, when we was in New York, we did win for Lunatic Best International Feature. Right. But the distribution companies all started going bust. Right. So there was no money in it. Right. So when I started looking at the footage of Billy and Lily Go to New York, I thought, I like this documentary filmmaking. Right. You don't need great big budgets to do it. Right. And you take complete control, and then you become an investigative filmmaker rather than just a filmmaker, you know. And then I acquired a press pass. I couldn't believe they gave me one actually. Right. And then that started opening doors for me, and I could take a few liberties on the street, you know, and with people who I'm talking to. Okay. But it was then at that point when I came back to London, started shooting footage of people on the street. And the child abuse came to the forefront, that I started to disclose to my family the full extent of my family's abuse, because you know, I've got sisters. I've got one sister that was being raped, more or less, from the age of very early ages. Like we're talking about 9, 8, 10. Okay. You know, and then my brothers, I found that they had been sexually abused in different places. I mean, one of my brothers, he went to, like I say, he went to a boarding school in Guildford, one of the most opulent areas in the country, very, very rich. He was outrageously abused there. My sisters, you know, like I spoke to Ken Livingstone about a place called Shirley Oaks. My sister was abused by the swimming pool man, you know, and even now, the woman who abused me there and used to give me regular beatings with a wooden spoon. I can remember I was so small because she used to get me to peel the potatoes in one of the cottages, as they call them. Her name was Miss Boland, and I believe that she's on her way out now. I think she's got cancer. But I can remember peeling potatoes and standing on a chair, that's how small I was, at the sink. And I would be so terrified, because if I looked round and she saw me and she was only in the next room, she would come and attack me. She would attack me, this woman. And she was in charge of probably about 15 children in this cottage. And she would really attack me. But her favourite thing was to creep up while I was doing the potatoes and hit me on the back of the legs. Bang, 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 as quick as she could and as hard as she could. And I would sort of collapse back, and she'd grab me up and say, get on with it. Get on with it. She'd inspect the potatoes. If there was one eye, if I left an eye in a potato, I would get a beating. You know?
All right, Bill, well, let's just come back to the film. So what was the first major film that you've done regarding the child abuse?
Well, because Billy and Lily Go to New York, that was a documentary, that was pure documentary, but because we were saying such things that weren't being exposed then about, you know, the royal family and how we are being manipulated, especially now. I mean, come on, you've only got to look at the royal family. They've never been so predominant. You know, they're trying to get the Queen to come forward and all love her. You can't love them. You can't love these people, because they are living on a completely different planet to us. And you'll know all about it.
We'll come on to that. So yeah, back to the film, Bill. So what was the name of the it wasn't Sun, Sea and Satan. That wasn't the first one, was it, or was it?
Yeah, the first serious documentary I made was Sun, Sea and Satan. Okay. I'd done news reports before that, you know, and I'd gone to different rallies, etc. But when I went over to the island of Jersey to make Sun, Sea and Satan, that was, and when I'll give you an example. When we went over there, we were staying at the Royal Golf Course, and we were staying in a bungalow on the edge of the Royal Golf Course. Now, there was myself, my camera woman Lily, and a guy called Darren. Okay, we can't give his second name because he was only a kid then. He was only 18 years of age, but he had a brilliant mind and he was great with notes, which is very important, as you know, when you're making documentary films. And he had a lot of street about him, so he's well savvied up. But Lily and I, we had to go over there first, and then he was to follow us out for security reasons, and he was staying in a different place. Even though we all wound up in the same place. But when you get off the plane at Jersey, you will see plaques everywhere from different lodges, different Masonic lodges, come and have lunch with us, come and do this with us, come and do that with us. All right, so it's so predominant. Right. When we went out there, Lily said to me one day, she said, "Have you been in my room, Bill?" And I said, "No." She said, "Well, some of my stuff's been moved." I said, "What do you mean it's been moved?" She said, "Well, my perfumes and things like that, it's just been moved in my bag. It looks like someone's been going down my bag." So I got Darren, and I said, "Darren, you ever been in?" He said, "No, never been in a room," because he wasn't even staying with us at the time. So what I'd done, in the wedge of the door, as you close the door, the front door, the front room door for the lounge and to all the bedrooms, we started wedging a matchstick in, very low down. So if you open that door, that matchstick was on the floor. Now, 3 occasions we went back after shooting footage and being followed on Jersey, and the matchsticks had gone. Now, we had requested no cleaners. We were guaranteed that no one would go into that bungalow because of we had sensitive equipment in there, etc. So that was part of the deal when we went there. And I went and asked the guy who owned it. I said, "Has anyone been in there?" And he said, "No, why?" I said, "Well, you know, we've had a couple of things, you know, maybe we've misplaced them and we thought they'd gone missing." I said, "And my driving licence has disappeared." So he said, "No, I'm sorry, I can't help you, but I can assure you that no one's been in there." And it was, I got a phone call from my sister. She was going to come out there. And she said, Billy, I can't come out there. She was crying. She said, I've had a letter from the House of Commons, and I want you to see it. And I said, can you read it to me? She said, no, I haven't got it with me at the moment. She said, no, I don't want to read it over the phone. So I said, okay. I said, look, don't worry, darling. I calmed her down. I said, we'll be home soon. I said, I sent Maria, I phoned England, and I said to Maria, my wife and producer, I said, will you go around and see Diana, etc., and calm her down. When we came back and we edited the film, it was released, as I say, to all the major broadcasting companies.
Right.
And within 2 weeks, my sister was found dead in her apartment.
So what did the letter say that she got from the government then?
She didn't say. She didn't want to say on the phone.
All right, and so you've never seen that letter?
No, I've never seen that now.
All right, okay. And that was Sun Seeing Satan. And can people watch that online?
Yeah, I mean, all of our work, you know, people can go.
Just give the domain name, Bill, so where people can watch all of these films.
Just go into www.piemeshfilms.com and you'll see all our work up. And we put all our work up for free because when the distribution companies collapsed, and when you're trying to sell DVDs and they're not selling because of the recession, and you've got important work and information like we've got, and you've got a background like I've got, it's not about the money, as the song says. It does not matter about the money. So I said to everyone at Pie Mesh Films, listen, we just got to put them up for free, because it is imperative that this information gets out. So that is how we survive. We survive from donations, from you know, wonderful sort of empathetic supporters, you know, and we still do sell a few DVDs because people, if they watch our work online, sometimes it buffs, and so if you want to watch it, I'd like to say that to you. If you want to watch it, we do sell the DVDs, you know, and all that money goes back in to our work.
Sure. Now I just want to ask you: have you got any inkling as to what might have been in that letter that she was referring to on the phone?
No, I haven't. I haven't got any inkling at all what it was about. But she was terrified.
But she was financing you to make that film?
Yeah, well, yeah.
So she's getting a letter from the government and you're making a film in Jersey about child abuse?
And she's got a letter off the government, yeah.
Right.
Like I say, her cause of death was unascertained, but, and you can also, if you go into Pie Mesh Films and look on the blog, you will see the full timeline of what happened, you know, around my sister.
In that particular film, you come across a house, if I'm getting this right, where there's a bust of a young child in there, and it's performing an obscene act. So it's like a grotesque statue that you get very
oral sex.
Yeah, you get
on a penis.
Yeah. So you got in the film. It's obviously completely freaking you out, and you sort of
lose it.
Yeah, a little bit. You lose it, and you drive away, and you're getting all upset and everything. And this isn't a criticism, because obviously it's affecting you. What for me?
I'm not taking it as a criticism. Don't worry about it.
I would have just knocked on the door and shoved the camera in the face of whoever answered the door and say, "What's that doing there? Yeah. Can you explain that?"
Yeah, but
it's so affecting you.
Yeah, but would you have done that? Would you have done that, Rich, if you'd done the matchstick trick?
Yeah.
If you've got the phone call from your sister and the strange persona on the island, and when you see statues like that, and they're only, we timed it in the vehicle at 30 miles an hour, it was 2 minutes and 20 seconds from Haute de la Garenne. 2 paedophilic statues, there was 2 of them there, and there was also a chimpanzee there as well, and chimpanzee is black magic.
Right.
Yeah, the dark forces, like the Queen was talking about. So I had been there when we discovered that 4 days. I was out there for 2 weeks. Now, to sort of start exposing things at that point was very, very dangerous. And when you see the film, people, you'll see the fear in the residents, you know, that inhabit Jersey, and how frightened they are to talk about Haute de la Garenne.
What about submitting? Because if you were to get that letter, that would tell you a lot, surely.
Well, I don't know where that letter is.
Right. Have you tried a freedom of information request? I know it sounds probably.
Well, when I came back and I found out, you know, after I found out that my sister was dead, I was absolutely devastated. And when I got back to England, I received a phone call from my sister, and I said to her, I was in an editing suite, and it was very late. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. In Whitstable in Kent, and she phoned me, and she was in a bit of a state, and she had a couple of people there, and I can't say their names at the moment, but I said to her, "What's your security?" And she said to me, "I can't guarantee my security unless you get your arse back here.
Right.
So I said, I'll be back tomorrow.
Right.
But she was dead.
Right. So you don't know of anyone that she might have shown that letter to? I know these are probably obvious.
I know we've already looked at all that, but we don't know. But we do have people that we're looking closely at. You know, there was a woman involved with her. Right. And but then it found out that this woman was supposed to be a friend, and then we found out that she was working for my sister's solicitors, because my solicitor had a case running for 7 years about her abuse, because my other brothers and some of my other brothers and sisters have taken, you know, the Home Office to court and received compensation.
Right.
But
all right, Bill, we'll go for another break, and we'll be talking more about some of Bill Maloney's films after this. Welcome back. I'm talking to filmmaker Bill Maloney, who has been exposing institutional child abuse. We were talking about your film Sun, Sea and Satan, and about the mysterious death of your sister, who was financing the film. Yeah. Now, the next film, was that the Medemsley Heroes film? Or?
Yeah, Adam Rickwood and the Medemsley Heroes.
Now, Adam Rickwood is someone who died in like a young offenders home. Yeah. Well, he was supposed to have hung himself, but none of his family believed that he hung himself, and there seems to be the security camera wasn't working that would have overseen that, etc., etc. So
exactly.
There seems to be suspicion over.
I'll just give you a short synopsis of it.
Yeah.
Adam Rickwood was found hanging in his cell. He had a broken nose and he had a broken wrist in a young offenders institution called Hassockfield. But Hassockfield was originally Medemsley.
Right.
So what we done, Medemsley, when it was Medemsley, and we're going back quite a way now, you know, going back to like 60s, 70s, 80s. When it was Medemsley, the guys who were there are now around about my age, or sort of 10 years younger than me, so they're sort of 47s and 45s. And there was a paedophile called Neville Husband, and he was in charge of the kitchens, and he was raping the young offenders. There was also the governor at the time, his name was James Miller Reid. When the investigation into Medemsley started, James Miller Reid was found dead in Canterbury. Don't know how he died, he was found dead. And the Governor General of prisons and at the time, prisons and young offenders institutions was Martin Neri. Martin Neri, after that, became the head of Dr. Bernardo's, and he's recently retired. Strangely, he retired after Adam Rickwood and the Medemsley Heroes came out.
So you think he was kind of moved to the side?
Absolutely.
And these other two guys who were involved in the abuse directly died?
Yes.
You don't know how?
Yes. Well, Neville Husband died about 3 or 4 months after he was released from prison, and they were taking the kids, the young offenders, they were taking them out of the young offenders.
So your film that exposed all of this, right, okay, has obviously created waves, we'll put it that way, putting the truth out about what's happened. Now, did that get mentioned in Parliament by David Cameron?
Yeah, but it did.
Now, for me,
it wasn't the film, because what it was a member of Parliament who saw the film, Adam Rickwood. I just want to reiterate, Adam Rickwood, he was in Hassockfield, which was originally Medemsley. So Adam Rickwood brings it up to date and tells us that it is still going on now.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was David Cameron's comment on the film?
David Cameron, I don't know whether David Cameron's seen the film, but there was a member of Parliament who had seen the film, and he asked the question to David Cameron, what are we doing about the Medemsley guys?
Now.
Now. Because they sued the Home Office now. £3 million was allocated to the Medemsley case. There was 12 victims of Medemsley that had come forward at the time. Out of that £3 million, £500,000 went to the victims. They wound up with between 50 and 40 grand each, right? But the institution took 2.5, took 2.5 million of the 3 million.
Right.
So their solicitor, the Medemsley Heroes solicitor, his name is David Greenwood, and it was 2 weeks ago. There was a major article in the national papers, I believe it was in the Daily Mail, the Mail on Sunday, saying that he has been trawling for victims, and he's been representing them, and he has made his company. They're called what's the name of the company? I think I forget the name of the solicitors, but anyway, that he works for. But David Greenwood, they have had millions and millions out of these guys, and now I believe that these guys are trying to take legal action to get some of that money back. But more victims have come forward, you know, so...
So, did Cameron, what was, because I haven't seen that actual comment.
Right, well, so what it was David Cameron, he was sitting, before he was Prime Minister, he sat on the select committee that decided what Cameron, what compensation and how the guys were going to be treated in the courts. And at the time, when he was on the select committee, Jack Straw was the Home Secretary. Now, Jack Straw also pushed it through about 2 or 3 years ago that any child in the care system is not that has been abused is not allowed to put that information into the public domain to protect the child. He says, Jack Straw. But Jack Straw was given the job of overhauling the sex offenders register when his own brother William was on it for 2 counts. And one of them was a 14-year-old girl, and violence was involved. Now, all he got was a £250 fine and £750 court costs. So he had, as far as I'm concerned, an interest because his own brother was on it. And you know, then we could go back to the Islington inquiry, all the different people that were living in Islington, etc. You know.
Okay, all right. Well, let's just try and broaden this a little bit, because it's not really something that I know a great deal about this issue. But in terms of let's say history, like throughout history, going back hundreds, even thousands of years. Is that anything that you've looked into? Is this something which is throughout history? Would you? Well,
you see, paedophiles. There are a lot of paedophiles. You know, I was told, I was given some information by a police detective, and then I looked it up and I found it on other blogs and other websites that apparently 1 person in 4 has a paedophilic tendency.
Okay, well that's.
But you've also got the one person in 4 has a paedophilic tendency. Now, they don't all put that into operation. They don't all do it. Some of them like control it. But one thing I would like to say is there is no cure for paedophilia at this moment in time.
Now, what about other countries? Is it just rife throughout every culture in the world?
Every single country. You will not find anywhere on this planet where paedophilia is not very, very strong.
But so then you would take from that then it's something inherent in the human makeup then, would you say?
Well, we were told, there was information about 5 years ago that came out, you know, when they started looking into the genetics, that it was genetic.
Right. Now,
we could find that gene.
Yeah, okay.
But now, that quietened down, so we stopped hearing about that, that it was genetic.
Because it's, when you look at that Medimsey Hero films, and all of the other sort of homes where this abuse sort of crops up, to me, it's almost like you've got a patio outside, and if you leave it alone, you're going to get a weed there and a weed there and a weed there, and the weeds are going to start popping up if you don't control it. It's almost like that with this, that I feel it's so sort of across the board.
Yeah,
that it will, anywhere where there's children that isn't properly checked and policed, they'll crop up there.
Yeah.
Which is.
But the point is, with the kids that have been abused, especially in institutional paedophilia, you know, like incestuous paedophilia is completely different. But you still have Stockholm's syndrome. You know, Stockholm syndrome is where the victim believes that the perpetrator is a good friend. Now you get Stockholm syndrome in all kind of paedophilia. You know, whether it's incestuous, institutional, or just guys on the street. They might, you know, they procure.
Now, I interviewed a chap called Neil Sanders, who studies mind control and perception management and this kind of thing. We spoke about the Jimmy Savile case, and he was suggesting, and you know, he may well be right, that the whole phenomenon. So take Jimmy Savile. He was never exposed, but so presumably someone was protecting him.
Jimmy Savile was exposed when he died.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what they waited until he died.
But he suggests that the intelligence agencies are the ones who are ultimately controlling some of these care homes and institutions.
Absolutely.
Because they have the power to prevent the police from doing a proper investigation, and B, make sure that things don't get into the media. And he suggests, and others have suggested, that they're used as blackmail traps for powerful people.
That's what I was just going to say.
Or money, or just snuff films and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So let's assume then that it does go right to the power at the top.
Paedophilia can control world politics.
Exactly.
World politics. Now, let me give you an example, right? If you look at Haute de la Garenne, right? Jimmy Savile. Now, Haute de la Garenne, what they do, but first of all, I've got to tell you that Jimmy Savile was often present at cabinet meetings in Israel. He was asked to go out there and sit in on cabinet meetings, Jimmy Savile. God knows why. But
I'm just trying to get to because it's the crux. Do you know what I mean?
You're a politician. You're a politician, right?
Yeah, I understand.
I'm Jimmy Savile.
Yeah.
I'll say, Rich, you want a kid?
Yeah.
Come over to Jersey. It's a pucker place. We've got some beautiful kids. You can do what you want. Yeah. Come on, it's going to cost you this, it's going to cost you that, it's going to cost you a little favour. You go, all right, Jim, that's great. Yeah. You go over there, but you don't know when you're having sex with a child, or you're abusing a child, or you're torturing a child, or you're killing a child, whether you've got a baby there and you want to bite it to death. Yeah. Then
it's filmed without.
It's filmed. You get home, DVD, or then would have been a VHS copy. Comes in the post. So you see it. You're the politician, and then we say to you, "We've got this on you. Look at this film." Then you'll come back and say, "What do you want?"
So in essence, then, it's something which is these grotesque acts that people do. That's something which is kind of somehow, for whatever reason, ingrained in certain people.
Yeah.
And the intelligence agencies, because the CIA have been involved in this kind of activity, actually training 9-year-old girls in how to pleasure men, and I think that's been admitted to, right? So they're using something which is there to as a power tool, effectively.
Yeah. Now, I would say all the intelligence agencies, all the secret services around the world, of every single country, the best thing that you can have, really, is if you call someone a paedophile, and you can prove that they're a paedophile and they're a politician or whatever, you have then got them by the short and curlies, and they will do whatever you want.
Right. So Jimmy Savile was just an agent of that system then. He wasn't a lone person who was using his own power and influence just to interfere with young girls and boys. It goes a lot further than that. He's protected by a web which goes to the very top.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy Savile, he was interested in children in care, because they're institutionalised, and a lot of them, if they didn't have any parents, you think if you're an orphan, and like I was in orphanages, and if you want to abuse a child, you can do it. Jimmy Savile was in charge of so much, it was untrue. And I believe, and I've said this many times, that I believe that Jimmy Savile and Peter Sutcliffe had a very strong relationship, long before Peter Sutcliffe was ever arrested.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we touched on that in a previous interview. Now, I just want to touch on Freemasonry as well, because a lot of people who end up getting involved in this kind of stuff are, well, for example, I've got a document here, which this article, well, I might bleep that out, right? I might not name him, but there was an article written in a particular magazine in the 1990s which lists quite a few very powerful people, and apparently the intelligence agencies came down on this magazine for publishing this, okay? Even though they had one of the victims, Mr. X, I think it was called, had written an affidavit saying that a certain person had abused him.
The Crays were giving children to Edward Heath, who was our Prime Minister, and that has been proved. And even the national papers have put that in.
Right, but in this article, it lists 6 police officers, some of them detectives, who were known to be Freemasons, who were the ones who were not prosecuting anyone involved in this particular ring. Yeah. Okay, so. Have you looked at Freemasonry at all, and is that something that you try and
I'm interested.
expose?
I'm interested in looking at
because that's one of the networks that they undoubtedly are using.
Well, I'll tell you, after I won my first award for a film, right, that was a short film. I started getting offers to become a Freemason by
Right.
people who knew me that had never disclosed that they were Freemasons. When I became a filmmaker and I won a couple of awards, well, it was after the first award, I started getting messages, come and join our lodge, Bill, we can help you, Bill.
So they're trying to take control of you?
Yeah, they were trying to take control of me, and they still are to a degree because of the way I put things across.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. And just to touch on the Freemasonry thing again, I know someone who, his name I will not say on camera, because someone told me this in confidence, in relation to the Holly Gregg case, okay, which we haven't got time to go into today, but this is an alleged child abuse case of a Down syndrome girl, and there's a lot of politics over that particular case. Okay, I don't want to go into an individual case, but what this guy said, and this guy's a household name, right? He said he was asked if he would look at the Holly Gregg case and basically try and put out information regarding it to get justice for Holly. That was the name of the. He said, "I'm not going to touch that case because that is a Masonic conspiracy." So he wouldn't go near it because it was a Masonic conspiracy. So that led me to believe, well, does that mean he's a Freemason? And are Freemasons? How much of it is controlled by the Freemason hierarchy? Do you think? Do you think?
Well,
how much
institutionally, the Freemasons have to be involved. They have to okay certain things, otherwise you're out. It is the power. It is the power at the top of the pyramid that allows certain things. I was told by someone who's, I think I was talking to David Icke actually, and he said to me that the Masonic involvement in child abuse. You cannot take child abuse out of Freemasonry because you'd have a lot of them are in it just for that. You know what I mean?
Okay, now,
and we're talking about big rings. We're talking about parties. You know what I mean? Serious parties where they're getting children of 9 years of age. They're giving. So you're a young boy and you're 9 years of age and you can't get an erection at the party because you're nervous. They say take that. They give you a Viagra. Then they will make kids have sex in front of each other, boys and girls, boys and boys, whatever. And you know,
let's just
the horrors
come on to how you want to tackle this. Someone rang me up after this Jimmy Savile thing came out, right? It was a woman who was absolutely fuming. She was saying, "Richard, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do?" And I said to her, "Well, the affidavit that's mentioned in this article is what's needed. You need the victims to come out and name who they've been abused by and sign an affidavit, because without that you've got nothing to go on. You've just got, a lot of it is rumour, okay? So
it's got to go into a court of law at some point. But can I just say that 90% of all victims that make claims never get their day in court. It's always settled out of court. And they are put under pressure and duress by their solicitors, because I have first-hand experience on this with Richard Hall, similar name to you, who is in one of the victims in Adam Rickwood and the Medhamsley Heroes. When he said to his solicitor, he said, I want to go into court. I don't want to accept £40,000 because I said to Richard Hall, I said, that is like giving you a gun, because he's abusing himself with like anything he can get, drugs, alcohol, etc. So with, you know, it's...
They want to actually have their day in court and have the person brought to justice.
But the solicitors don't want them. And this solicitor, David Greenwood, even told his clients, and he had hundreds of them from different institutions, I think 58 different institutions, this firm, Jordan's, the solicitors are called. They have dealt with 58 different institutions. Some of these institutions have 100 people coming forward. David Greenwood gave instructions to all the victims: don't talk to the police. That's a bit strange. So the solicitor either didn't trust the police, or the police didn't trust the solicitor.
So other than victims coming forward and giving affidavits, being brave enough to stand up and either go on camera or give it an affidavit and press charges, what you're proposing in your latest film, which I'll just give the name of, it's Bill Maloney shouts amnesty for paedophiles who expose the rings they work for, and that's coming out, well, it's out now. You can watch that from Bill's website. So what you're wanting to do, and I would imagine this is controversial, Bill, but I can see the logic in how it would work. What Bill's saying is that if a paedophile who's involved and has committed crime, i.e. paedophilic crime, comes forward and names everyone else in that ring, that first person will get protection and will not get prosecuted, and then they catch everyone else in the ring.
Absolutely.
So and just explain, I mean, I've explained it there, but...
it's the paedophile rings, obviously, you can have 100 people, 200 people, a whole institution, out of institutions, and if you do that, the one person that's going to come forward and expose, because it's coming on you and you're going to get it. We are people like we are really seriously. We are coming to get you proper, and we want we're going to get the tariffs going up. The punishments are going to be longer. It will cause mayhem amongst paedophile rings. I know you get solitary paedophiles that work alone, but if we could do this, then who knows what names will come forward, because paedophiles are cowards. They are cowards, and if they find out, supposing you're a paedophile and you've been, say, you could have been involved with a young child with a small group at a party, and a child could die from injuries caused to it by or whatever, so that is going to terrify you for the rest of your life, the crimes. Right. Now, if you have that chance to go to the police and say, I was working with X, Y, Z, this happened, that happened, you push forward the evidence, these people become arrested, that paedophile should be given amnesty, though he should still be watched.
Right, okay. I can see
give him a new identity, but still monitor him very closely.
I can certainly see how that might work, but who would have the authority to put, because what you're saying is you're going to let one of them free.
Yeah.
Who would have the authority to do that?
The people. Right. The people of the country. That's what you should all be doing. You should all be pushing for this, so that if a paedophile exposes a ring that he or she has been working with, that they get amnesty. And we might have to allow a few paedophiles to get off, though we will still monitor them, but imagine what they will disclose, how many people they could disclose, and that is the way that we will get to the top people, to like whether they're royalty, whether they're politicians, whether they're involved in the army, but senior people will then be caught, because they're the ones that are continuing it, and that is why they are being protected, especially in Freemasonry.
This is the thing, Will, if we're correct that the intelligence agencies are involved in these blackmail traps, etc. And that who do the intelligence agencies ultimately protect?
It's
the Queen.
If someone else can come up with a better idea, I'm all for it. But it's like, from where I come from the street, we're looking for grasses. And that's what they are. We want a grass. We want the grasses to come forward, because the police would cease to function if they never had informers.
What I'm saying, Bill, is if the extent of the pyramid rather than the ring it is revealed, then the system will fall.
Exactly, but that's the only way
you're talking about a kind of a revolution almost.
A revolution against paedophilia.
Getting rid of the shit that's infested in our establishment.
We cannot continue to allow the child abuse to happen as it is. It is outrageous and it is evil. There's no two ways about it. And the children are the future keepers of the planet. Now, these kids that are being abused, they wind up dysfunctional.
It ruins their lives.
It ruins their lives and their talents. There's so many talented people, and suicide is predominant amongst victims of child abuse. They are just killing themselves left, right and centre.
Right. All right, Bill, well, thanks for inviting me down to London, and good luck with the film that you've just produced and future ventures. But thanks very much.
And you, thank you very much, Rich, and good luck with what you're doing.
All right.
I want to talk to you about the aliens now.
All right. Believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. I'm Richard D. Hall. Good night.